Dimensional highlighting has become a modern classic. Let's get into my super simple, definitive guide to foil placement. The wonderful Erica is a level 6, a warm level 6. Her hair is medium texture and medium density. After sectioning across the top of the head into front and back, I take a fine section along the nape of the neck hairline. Notice how the section goes from the bottom of the nape to just above the ear. As always, I'm using Foil Me foils, and I'm starting off here with the wide. The wider foil size means that you can cover a larger surface area faster, making you more efficient. Now I'm onto my first weave. It's not too bold and it's not too fine. You could say it's a traditional highlighting weave. I'm taking my foil and then using my thumb, I'm going to put that hair under tension by holding it down onto the foil. At the same time as keeping that tension, I'm actually resting the underside of my hand on the head. This gives you extra tension and keeps that foil close to the scalp. I'm going in with my lightener now, which is 20 volume. I'm using 20 volume here on Erica and making sure I really evenly saturate that section before sealing up on both sides. Now there must be hundreds of different sorts of sectioning clips, but my preference when I'm foil highlighting are for these metal ones. I actually use them to take the sections and find that it saves me application time. Repeating exactly what I did in my first foil, being sure that I go from the edge to the edge of my section and my weave is neither too bold nor too fine. This starts to build dimension internally in the highlighting and also adds a pop of colour when your client pulls their hair up. Once I've applied the lightener and folded up the foil, it's time to move on to what is the widest part of the head. You can see here that my section focuses on the lower nape. This is to make sure that our results are edge to edge. Once that's folded up, I move on to my next section, which focuses on the upper back. The same type of weave, not too bold and not too fine, and making sure that I apply the lightener right up to the root. Whether it's a sun-kissed, low-maintenance result, as I'm featuring here, or if I'm packing in the foils for a more traditional application, this is pretty much my go-to placement. Once that foil is in, I move to the opposite side and repeat the process. It's worth mentioning here that whilst you're following a pattern, you don't have to make things exactly the same. It's a little bit like eyebrows. They don't need to be identical. It's all about using the techniques and following a pattern to create a natural result. Sectioning straight across, a triangle is created by the foils on either side. I take a section that's an inch deep and go in with a bold weave. I apply my lightener and fold up my foil. You can see here on my next section that this weave here is probably the boldest I'll use throughout this whole application. And this is what starts to create that lived-in look. On my next section that's 1.5 inches deep, it's teasing light time. I go in with my comb at the end of that section, pushing the hair back towards the scalp and then weave out a bold highlight. I then apply the lightener, avoiding the back-combed area. I find that back-combing or teasing the hair once or twice from the end of the section firmly towards the root ensures you get a blended result, but means that the back-combing and teasing isn't too tricky to remove at the backwash. Repeating on the opposite side with another woven teasy light. Moving on from a technique which gives us a diffused result, we now want to focus on mimicking hair that's naturally lightened in the sun. So you can see my weave there is a little bolder, and this is going to go right to the root on both of the upper top sections. Now we often think of the word negative as being bad, but when it comes to dimensional highlighting, negative space is your friend. There's me wagging my finger. That's to show the hair that you actually want to leave out and to not highlight. I'm at the crown now and I've got another woven highlight. And this again, it's gone back to the standard traditional woven highlight. Not too bold, not too fine, and I'm taking it right up to the root. Keeping sun-kissed in mind and adding a teasy light to the mids and ends of the top back section. Together with the face frame, this is where we want it to be lightest and brightest. With our final top back section generally being in the area of the crown, I like to keep things blended. For that reason, this will always be a woven highlight. I want the brightness from a highlight that goes to the root that I will then diffuse down with a soft root shadow afterwards. And finally, on the hair we left out as negative space on either side, a teasing light. Now that's it for the back placement. It's really simple and really quite fast once you've practiced it. This would normally take me around 20 minutes in salon. Moving on to the front of the head. I like to work either side of the parting, and here I've split my section into 2 channels. I'm starting with the face frame and working back from the face. Taking super fine sections and weaving right through the section, my foils are placed on top of each other, effectively back to back. I generally use 3 or 5 foils in this pattern to create a light and bright face frame. Once the hairline foils are in, it's time once again to mimic how the sun would naturally lighten the hair. I gently tease the hair that's left out from the foils, and again, paint with lightener and seal in a foil. In order to create contrast and make the face frame pop, next up I apply a bold woven highlight. Once this is sealed up in the foil, I take the remaining hair from that section, tease it gently, and add a highlight on the mids and ends. And finally, on the last section of that lower channel, it's all about the negative space again. You want to avoid highlighting that very root area. Oh, there's that wagging finger again. I like to add a bold teasing light, backcombing once or twice, and then weaving out the hair and placing it in a foil. Now, whilst this is my definitive dimensional highlighting tutorial, there are loads of different techniques out there, and it's worth having all of them in your repertoire. Creative highlighting has come such a long way, and it means that we get the chance to mix things up in salon, and no 2 sets of foils need to be the same. Continuing on with the face frame, and I've repeated what I did with the front of the lower side channel. I've got 5 foils here and they're back to back. Yes, 5. I've woven right through the section, and then with the hair that's left out, I'm applying a teasing light, a bold teasing light here, to the mids and ends. Next up, I take a slightly bigger section, about 1.5 inches deep this time. I create a bold woven highlight and make sure it's well saturated with lightener before folding up the foil. When you're taking a bolder highlight, you always need to saturate well to get maximum lift. Then I go in with a teasing light once again on the mids and ends. And as my final section is near the crown, I place a traditional woven highlight. Whilst I've demoed a virgin full head application, you could take any one of these techniques and apply them to somebody who's already blonde. Alternatively, repeating any of these on the same head of hair will give you a bolder, more contrasting graphic look. Before we see the result, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a like. Make sure you're subscribed and hit those notifications. There's loads more hair over on my Instagram, which is on screen now. Here we have the untoned result. It's super blended, really pretty, and extremely wearable. Now let's have a look at the finished toned result.